All right, what's up guys? My name is Carl Forian, designated broker for Kenneth James Realty, and today we are going to review how to properly, the keyword is properly, set up a BINSR. So let's get right into this thing. We use .loop as our transaction management system. We've been using it for a couple of years now. It is fantastic in a lot of ways, and I strongly suggest, and I'm not paid to say this, but use .loop or use SkySlope or use a transaction management system. Doing it the old school way is fine. However, I think you're going to see some benefit to using a good transaction management system. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to use a loop, or what we call a loop, a file that has actually already been closed. And so let's take a look at the inspection for just 2 seconds. Now, keep in mind this is the first time I'm actually looking at this inspection. I haven't seen this thing before, and we're going to kind of go through it together in real time and show you exactly what I'm looking for as a broker and what red flags that I would see personally, if there are any. This may be a very, very clean condo, so we're about to find out. This is a condo in Biltmore, probably built in the 80s is my guess. I don't really know exactly when this was built. But, okay, so it's 38 years of age. And so let's go through this thing just real quick. What I'm looking for is anything that sticks out in the inspection report. So it could be like a red mark or blue mark or text that is pointing something out, but I do want to go through every single paragraph of this thing. For purposes of the video, I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to skip right to the highlighted sections so we can kind of speed this thing up here just a little bit. So what we're looking at right here on this very first page is there are some grading issues or something here. And it looks like there's a planter installed at the west side of the residence above grade and against the exterior wall. This would not be recommended. And I think there was a picture of it if we looked at this thing. You know, there's some potted plants right here. So there's some stuff going on. So we might want to have them just move that potted plant and see what we can do with that. All right, let's get into the exterior doors. It looks like the door latch does not latch all the way closed. It doesn't seal properly. So maybe we just need some adjustment and the weather sealing needs to be replaced or repaired. We'll get into the verbiage that we want to use on things like this, okay? Next thing, patio door rolls roughly in the track. Very, very common for that age of a house. And the patio screen door is missing. Somebody probably walked through it at some point and then just tossed it. And so that's something that you want to consider. Keep scrolling down here. The air return box is very dirty. Now, let me tell you something. I'm not an inspector. I'm not a general contractor. I don't know a whole lot about HVAC systems, but what I do know, if there's dirt inside that air box, there's probably something else going on there. And what you want to consider is what is the performance of the AC system. All right, this is very, 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 very big here in Phoenix, and it always seems like as soon as you get a possession, close of escrow, and people are moving in, moving out, whatever the situation is, and the air conditioners are running constantly like 24/7, something inevitably breaks. So now's a good time to take a look at this thing. So let's just look at this, back up just a little bit. AC system says it is functional. Cooling system is central system maintained by the HOA. The equipment is not inspected as part of this inspection. All right, so this tells me that there's some kind of differential system in here. Like this is not a typical system you would see in like a single family home. So something we want to call maybe the HOA and see what they're responsible for. Heating system was not operated, and that might be an issue there too, so it's something you want to consider. And it looks like the age of the HVAC is about 7 years. You know, everything looked pretty good. When we see a dirty air box like this, it tells me that there probably haven't been AC filters installed in this a long time. Something that I would very, very much consider, because when you don't use an air filter, it tends to clog up the coils, and then you have other issues moving forward. So maybe ask for an HVAC inspection will be the first thing I would do personally. But beyond that, maybe ask the seller to do a HVAC service, which would include cleaning the coils. That would be something I would recommend. All right, take a look here, smoke detectors. This is a no-brainer, guys. When you're talking about safety and security type stuff, absolutely ask for it in the BINSR. And one of the things that you should really, really consider is aggressively fight for your clients. Like, you should be pushing hard to get as much stuff as you possibly can. And I think a lot of people think that just because you aggressively negotiated upfront on the price doesn't mean you can really knock them on the BINSR. My opinion is always ask and see what they're willing to do. If they're not willing to make repairs or whatever it is, they just want to give you credit, and we'll talk about that in a minute, fight hard. This is one of the last points of negotiation that you're going to have in this transaction. So I'm absolutely going to ask for a smoke detector to be installed in the bedroom. Looks like the panel's okay for the disconnect, and all sorts of stuff is going on here. It says the bedroom receptacles are not affiliated with the GFI or AFCI. Not required at the time of construction, so it doesn't really apply to 2018 codes. And I'm just scrolling, right? So now I'm looking in the kitchen. It looks like the microwave is not vented outside the residence. Again, that's not required, but they mention it for informational purposes here. Okay, sink repairs are required. There is no hot water pressure at the kitchen sink. We recommend the reason be determined and repaired. That's a no-brainer, guys. All right, so definitely put that in the BINSR and ask them to repair and rectify any situation there. It could be something as simple as a bad valve in the faucet, or maybe the valve is closed, or something deeper there. Maybe it could be blockage in the actual plumbing line. We don't know, but we're going to ask for that. Cabinets, minor water damage present at the sink base cabinet. Very, very common. A lot of times things will get backed up or leak, or maybe water will spill down. Find out what the reason is, though, and see if there's a major issue there. We're going to need to have more inspections and get it resolved. All right, windows. Looks like there's some moisture staying between the panes. Arizona, again, we get so much heating and cooling, and it's hot, and these things tend to expand and contract, and those seals go bad and let in some thermal or some moisture, and then that thermal barrier is gone, and you're going to want to get that repaired. So I would recommend this would go ahead and get this fixed. And then it says the springs do not properly hold the windows at the great room or the living room. Ask for the repair. Again, you know, we don't want to be nitpicky, but at the same time we need function. It's form and it's function. So we're going to ask for that. Tub and surround, there's some blemishes in the tub surface near the drain. As a broker, I'm not too concerned about that unless there's something deeper. If it's leaking water around the drain, or if there are deep gouges, we might want to have an explanation. Maybe there's a plumbing leak and they were trying to, you know, jackhammer something out of the drain or something like that. We would want to know that kind of stuff, right? So maybe ask for an explanation. I can't see it from the picture. And it says the water diverter does not separate the water properly between the tub and the shower. Very, very simple fix. It's like a $10 or $12 part at Home Depot, unless it's a custom thing. And it looks like it's a really nice, maybe like a brushed nickel or an aluminum type diverter. So maybe that might be something I would ask for if it gets a little bit more expensive. Number 11 here, toilet tank is loose at the bathroom. We're going to talk about this for just 2 seconds. Stuff like this is easy. It doesn't require anything more than a handyman, right? A lot of you guys always ask for licensed plumbers or whatever the situation is to correct items like this. If you look at the contract, it just says in a workmanlike manner. So consider that when you're writing up the BINSR. Things that I would ask for licensed people would be like HVAC, definitely electrical, but plumbing and stuff like this, I'm not too concerned about having a licensed plumber. Matter of fact, I could probably get in there and just crank down the bolts and tighten it up, make sure there's not a seal broken or something like that, and I'd be comfortable moving on. So think about this as we kind of plan our BINSR. Moving on, number 6 in the bedroom. Again, same problem we had in one of the other pieces of glass there, the moisture is between the panes. I would recommend going ahead and get that done. Now, some questions do come up, you know, who owns the windows? This is a condo. Does the HOA own the window, or does the homeowner own the window? Call the HOA and find out. So there are some HOAs that actually own the windows and will replace the windows for you. So please make that call. And this is before you submit the BINSR. You have to know this stuff before you submit the BINSR. And by the way, you should be getting quotes on this stuff, right? Like in covering your client's butt. So find out, call the HOA, do the due diligence on your end. As a good agent, you're going to call the HOA and find out. All right, scrolling through, everything else is looking pretty good here. So this is the maintenance summary here. This is pretty much everything that we had just talked about. Generally, I'm pretty happy with this inspection. It came back fairly clean. Like, we can go ahead and ask for a couple of these things, and I wouldn't have like a list of 30 things that I need to send over to the seller's agent, which is kind of embarrassing sometimes. But the one of the ones I just closed up in Phoenix on 43rd Avenue Thunderbird had 32 items. And yes, we agreed to all repairs, and we got every single one of them done. So don't be ashamed. Like, don't be afraid to ask for things. Like, be aggressive and work for your clients. It's going to really pay off in the long term, and your client's going to feel like you're fighting for them. So do that. All right, so what we're going to do here to start this BINSR is find out what the actual date was for the purchase contract, and it is the date that the last signature was signed. So for example, if it was an offer from the buyer to the seller, it's the last date of the last counter or the last date on the purchase contract. And keep in mind, there are instances where the seller will offer the buyer. So in that case, if that was the case, whoever signed later would be whatever date you would use for the contract. So I'm gonna look at the purchase contract, and I'm gonna basically just scroll down and see what we got going on here. All right, so it looks like there was no counter offer, and it looks like this was signed on 7/4, and this was signed on 7/5. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this 7/5 date in the BINSR, and because the BINSR is already done here on this file, because it is a closed file, I'm gonna go ahead and add a document, go to templates, and then what I wanna do, go down here to Arizona Association Interactive Documents. I'm gonna click on that, I'm gonna type in here, I'm gonna just type in BINSR and see what happens. Boom, there it is. Go ahead and copy that thing right into the file, click on OK, and then we're gonna start filling this stuff out. What's really nice about .loop is it does fill in some forms for you, or some fields. I'm gonna go ahead and autofill this thing and see what it comes up with. Beautiful. Contract date is wrong, so let's go ahead and fix that contract date back to July 5th. And Scott Mitchell looks like the seller, Victor Silva is the buyer, and then we've got this premises address here. And by the way, don't get freaked out, I'm using the names because it's public record. Don't freak out. If you hate me, leave a comment. All right, buyer elects as follows. You got three different things here. Premises accepted. The minute that you submit this BINSR, let me back up just a second. The minute that you submit a BINSR, your inspection period is over. If you submit a BINSR on day 2, you've effectively shortened the inspection date to 2 days. And people are like, why would you ever do that? Well, maybe you have to order an appraisal and you need to start the negotiation on the BINSR, right? So if time is of the essence and you really need to get going and hustle on an appraisal, you know, as soon as you submit it, you can do that. I tend to drag these things out until I have quotes. You know, I'm well educated as far as what like the HOA would cover and what they're not going to cover. You know, if I've had a chance to talk to inspectors about maybe mold or termite damage or something like that. And we'll go look at the termite here in just a second and just see exactly what we're looking at. In this case, I'm going to select the third option here, which is the buyer does elect a seller to provide an opportunity to correct the disapproved items, which we're going to list. The second one, where the premises are rejected, that cancels the contract. You are done, and no, you can't renegotiate that contract. The contract is canceled, so you're going to take the BINSR, you're going to send that to title, and you're going to send the other copy to the seller's agent, and you're going to get the earnest money back, hopefully. So that's what those three boxes represent. If you guys have any questions, obviously leave me a DM or a comment, and I'll get right back with you on that. So we're going to put in here something like, you know, just seal up the toilet. Okay, let me back up for 2 seconds. When we're creating the BINSR, there are some things I want you to absolutely 100% of the time do. And that is very, very clearly spell out. So I don't want you to say something like toilet seal broken, right? Because you're just stating that the toilet seal is broken. You're not asking for the toilet seal to be repaired. Very, very critical mistake a lot of agents use, or do, I'm sorry. So again, recap. Number one, what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to put a line item in there saying referred to inspection, you know, line item 11A, toilet seal broken, or you know, the two halves need to be screwed together, or whatever it is. I need you to say repair seal between tank upper and lower. All right, so just a couple things I just added in there. I'm very, very specifically describing what repairs I want to do here. So I did say repair seal between upper and lower halves of the toilet, and I should put in there and tighten to specs. So I'm very, very clear on that. Repair the window seals in the guest bedroom 2 and the great room. So I'm identifying what bedroom it was, and really just dialing in to the micro on this thing, because I don't want any ambiguity in this BINSR at all. I want a 5th grader to pick it up and be like, yes, I'm knowing exactly what you're talking about, and there's absolutely no discrepancy. So do that, okay? Please do that. And then as far as this is concerned, you're gonna sign on this line right here. If you were gonna waive your inspections, you would sign on this line here, right? So I need you to be very, very, very aware. Please do not have your clients sign on this field and this field, because are you waiving the inspection or are you trying to get some repairs? So you need to distinguish between that. All right, so when you actually finish out the BINSR and you're ready to submit this thing to the seller's agent, literally just send it in an email and describe the repairs. You need to attach the inspection, and that does include the termite, okay? So the sellers are entitled, if you look at the contract, the sellers are entitled to all inspections. And people are like, well, my buyer paid for the inspection. Well, in your contract that you guys signed, you're giving the seller the right to those inspections. So please be very, very aware of that. That's a question I get probably at least once a month. So when the seller sees this BINSR, they're going to be very, very clear because we did the BINSR correctly, we worded it correctly. They're going to respond, right? Here's the catch. If you're asking for 32 items on a BINSR, as a buyer's agent, as a good buyer's agent, I'll probably call the seller's agent and say, hey, look, here's the BINSR before we sign this thing. Can we please pre-negotiate this? Because here's what can happen. If you submit a BINSR with like 35 items on it and the seller's overwhelmed and the seller gets offended and they get emotional, which is something you don't want to have happen, they can tell you to go pound sand. And they can say, you know what? I'm not going to fix anything. And then you either have to accept or decline that response. It's not like we have a counteroffer situation here. So you really only get one opportunity to negotiate this. If it's a situation where you're like, you know what, we need to have a conversation, please just pick up the phone and call the seller's agent and have a very, very brief conversation about, you know, what is reasonable in this transaction, what the seller's response could or would be, and pre-negotiate that. So we're all kind of all on the same page before we send that BINSR out. Because I don't want to have happen is I don't want you to submit the BINSR with a huge list of things on it, but I want you to fight for your client, right? So there's a fine line there. And then they say, but you know what, yeah, all bets are off. You know, you're going to take it as is. That's not really acceptable. So please take an extra 2 or 3 minutes and just pre-negotiate this stuff and make sure it's done right the first time. So when the seller sends a response back, the seller's going to have 3 options here, right? It's like the seller's going to agree to correct the items, the seller is unwilling or unable to correct any of the items, or the seller's response is this, like, hey, we're going to do half your stuff, right? And then the seller's going to sign here, and then you have one final chance to either accept that response or reject it. So literally, it's A or B. Buyer elects to cancel the contract, or buyer accepts the seller's response. Done and done. And so one thing I want you guys to think of too, let me just back up for 2 seconds. I'm not going to say the changes on this thing. Back up for 2 seconds. We also need to consider the termite inspection. And also, if you guys are doing stuff in like Old Town Scottsdale or homes that were built before like 1980, you may want to consider having sewer inspections done. I've done a lot of sewer inspections where the lines are actually fractured, or we have roots growing through them, or we have major, major issues with the structural integrity of the sewer system. We use accurate leak detection. It's like $250, and they give you like a cute little, here's one right here. Boom, look at that. It's not gonna focus. All right, so anyways, they give you a little USB thing right here, and you know, you can see all the videos right on this thing. You plug it in your computer, and then you review all the video. You're gonna see some gross stuff, as you can imagine, and you're gonna realize that there's a whole nother world, so to speak, underground. Throw that back in there. Anyways, so when you're dealing with inspections, please help your clients do as much due diligence on the property as you possibly can, and that's going to save your butt, I promise you. Let's divert our attention for 2 seconds and look at the termite. And right here, it looks like we might actually be good to go here. So no visible sign of word-destroying insects were observed at that time. Now, line number 7 here does say that, you know, they can't see everything, right? Like, they're not going to tear the house apart and look for termites. Here in Arizona, we kind of have lazy termites, and they're called subterranean termites. They're not super, super aggressive, which is nice, but they're not going to pull apart the wall and see if they're inside the wall. They're not going to take down the ceiling and see if they're inside the ceiling. If there's visible evidence, they might give them cause to investigate further. But, you know, on line number 8, item number B, this says there's no visible evidence of any termite activity. That's exactly what you want to see. So that wraps that up. If you guys have any questions on this thing, please reach out. Shoot me a DM. You can do that right through YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or even call me. Text me on my cell, 480-455-9003, or write a comment here below on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time.